Calling the meeting to order. Can you hear me? Am I coming through the loudspeaker? No, you can hear me here.
No, I hear you through.
Oh, okay. Will the secretary call the roll?
Kathy Cavalier. Frank Falcone.
Here.
Chris Wilson.
Here.
Connie Stuckert.
Here.
Dario Scalia.
Here.
Tiffany DeMeo here.
All present and accounted for. Could we please stand for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. And we had thought that we were going to have to amend the agenda, but it turns out we do not have to amend it. So if someone can move to approve the agenda as it stands, I'd appreciate it. Rosario, second.
I'll second.
Chris? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nobody? Okay. We don't have a public, so there will be no public comment for agenda items. We now need to consider approving the minutes from the March 28th meeting. Does anybody have any additions or corrections to those minutes? Tiffany did her usual wonderful job. Would somebody like to congratulate her by approving to accept them? By moving to accept?
I move to approve the minutes.
Second. Rosario will second. All in favor? Aye. Okay. And we will now move on to the next item on the agenda. We are being asked to consider approving the submission of Class 2 historic resource applications for 4 properties. And Kathy, would you briefly describe the properties for us?
2 of them are in the Delaware County Historic Resources Survey that was published originally.
Could you go through them property by property, please?
I am, but I wanted to separate them out.
Oh, okay.
So the 2 that there are in the Historic Resource Survey, which is Friends Meeting and the James Price House. So because that's part of the criteria that makes them able to apply. This is only for application purpose.
Right.
So basically, Friends Meeting, built in 1692, was the first meeting house of the Quakers at that time, moving from the William Lewis House to the Friends Meeting House. It had additions added to it in 1710, and part of it is still the originals contained within those additions as it stands. Along with the Friends Meeting House, there is a the schoolhouse is on the same property, owned also by Friends, and the cemetery. So they're all included in this one piece.
Mm-hmm. So it's actually the meeting house, the schoolhouse, and the cemetery.
All in one, yes. And the schoolhouse dates to 1885. And I believe the cemetery is also 1708.
Is the cemetery still in active use?
Yes. As far as the history of it, unless you need to know, I mean, basically, it's the original building. It's still in operation. Friends Meeting would like it to be on the National Register, so they're going to apply for that as well. So it qualifies for that. I think it's pretty much a given that this is a historic resource, and it has been for quite a while. The other property is the James Price House, similar, that was on the inventory. The James Price House, if you're not familiar, is down 252 at the corner of St. David's Road when you're going to Episcopal. It's on the right-hand side. Better known to most of us as Dr. Giuliani's house, and he was a veterinarian for years. That is a very old home as well, built in the early 1700s. It has tons of interesting architectural additions to it that they uncovered. Several walk-in fireplaces. They actually had an entrance on one part of the home that allowed horses to pull the wood into the house and put it into the fireplace, which isn't real common. The barn is also included in this, and the barn is to the left of the home. The home was sold to the veterinary practice in Newtown Square, and unable to satisfy zoning, they did not pursue it and then put it up for sale. So it is now for sale. And originally when they bought it, a developer was interested. So we feel that we didn't think it was in peril at the time because she was going to, we had met with her and knew her intent. So I have to petition. She will not apply at this point because she has it for sale.
But she's still the owner.
She's still the owner. Yes. So those two, as I said, are in the inventory, and you can read, I can give you the information.
Is she going to oppose the application? Does she feel it would hurt the sale prospects?
I'm sure she feels it could. That's why she won't apply. But I don't know if she'll oppose it or not, because she was into maintaining the historical architecture. She was into maintaining the house as is and renting it to one of her employees.
They are for sale. But you don't know who's gonna buy, what they're gonna do.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
And you're not going to be real. I mean, the Julian family originally was very happy to sell to a person that was going to maintain it as a veterinary practice. So now.
A general question that I have. So the owner for being listed. How did this problem or proposed owner of object? What is what's gonna happen?
Well, we make our decision irrespective of the owner's opinion.
Okay.
It would be like last month.
Pardon?
It would be just like last month.
Like
Yeah,
this.
right,
Yes.
exactly,
Then is the board of supervisor has to have the last word,
exactly.
either to override us or to override it.
Yeah,
That's
we
the
just,
process.
yeah, we just make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. They actually do the heavy lifting. They make the final decision.
Right. I mean, and their decision has to be motivated either to this board or to the owner.
Well, we have to accept whatever they decide, yeah.
Well, I understand, but there has to be a motivation. This board is formed by that.
Right. Oh, yes,
I
they,
really don't see how.
they take what we say into consideration.
Right.
Yes,
And if someone's disputing whether they want to be on the ordinance, this is totally what the supervisors are saying. This building is historically relevant. Irrelevant is whether you're going to put a building or you want to be able to build later or you want to
I
build.
understand. Just
So,
wanted to let-
yeah, so they should not even take that into consideration. Should totally be the history of the
Yeah,
building.
I'm sorry.
But they could do that.
Yeah, no, it was just, I felt it was like more of internal,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
educating me on what the process is, that's all.
Okay, these two properties, the one is listed in one of our books, but not in the inventory. And so I'll start with that one's 28 Paper Mill Road. It's, if everybody's familiar with the paper mill house, if you go further down the road on the left, there is another mill worker's house, and it's known as the mill worker's house. Built in 1835, it housed the mill workers from we believe, after I did some research, a sawmill behind the house that made wood that was sold to Germany to make toys. That is what we're finding out. So that was the mill behind this house. We didn't need to look at it. It's occupied by Linda McIsaac, and she did extensive renovation to make it period appropriate. It's beautiful inside, and I'll give you the website. You can actually go see, because it was posted on the architect's website. So it was I believe three families lived there at that time. And now it's one large house. And it's basically as it was. It looks as it did in 1835. And it's part of the paper mill historic area. So we believe that. And she's in England. She couldn't be here, but she asked me to have it put on the for application.
Looking at it right now. It's a nice house.
It is. I took a lot of pictures at it, so. And the last property is the Alice Grimm Elementary, and I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with that. It's called Stratford Friends right now.
Right up around the corner.
Yes, it is. So Alice Grimm Elementary School was built as it was called the Newtown Public School, built in 1925. First principal at that time was Alice Grimm, and her sister Myrtle taught there. So they are homegrown. Their Grimm house is one of our houses on the inventory that is down on Gradyville Road. They were born and raised, went to school, and I think she said she went to the normal school. Then she becomes teacher principal at Alice Grimm, and stays until the 50s, and they named the school after her. She was a sort of an icon in the town, and the school as well. It's still being used, so it's structurally very sound. Notable for the community, as far as the community is very attached to the school. Not sure why. I don't know if she would appreciate that when she passed away, the name was not kept, but the name was dedicated. The town has a history of dedications, but then the name doesn't stay. But everybody knows it as the Alice Grimm Elementary. And it's been two schools since, I think, Delco Christian as well. I have an extensive, if you want to read, history on the Grimm sisters. They were given many awards. Well known, she actually had a historic house on Westchester Pike where the Goddard School is, if you're familiar. And
That was sad when that house got torn down.
that was very sad. And that was because there was no ordinance. And we found many of the really interesting artifacts that if you go into the paper mill house, you look at that huge floor to ceiling map on the left, and that was taken from their trash when they were demolishing the house. It's a gorgeous map, and we have it framed in there. And there were other things. So we have a whole room in the paper mill that we're dedicating to the Grimm and John Macaulay, who was a teacher there. So I have a lot of history, all her books, all her writings, and it's pretty interesting. We're putting it all together
What was
as
the
we
sister's
speak.
name?
Myrtle. And a lot of news articles. So we have all that on hand as well. And that was the fourth one. If you have any questions in specific that.
Anybody have any questions for Kathy? Okay, what I'd like to do is vote on each of these properties individually to move them forward. And then we'll move on to the next agenda item. So Kathy, these are your babies. Do you want to make the motion to start with the mill workers' house to move it forward?
Sure. I make the motion that we vote to approve application ability. What do we call that? It's the ability to apply, really, right? At this
Yes.
point.
Yes, to
Yes.
move it forward to the next
Move
stage.
forward with the application for 28 Paper Mill Road.
Second?
First or second.
Frank, second. All in favor?
I
Aye. Next,
make the motion that we approve Friends meeting to move forward with the application process for class 2.
second. Rosario,
All in favor?
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next,
I make the motion that we move to allow Alice Grimm Elementary School, approve the application process for class 2.
second,
I'll second that.
Chris gets his turn.
What was the fourth?
All in favor?
I,
And last but not least,
I motion to put the James Price House anything as an application word that may apply for application status. We need to come up with a term for this
I'll let
because it's an
Tiffany work her
application.
magic when she does the minutes.
So the James Price House qualifies to apply to be put into the ordinance as a class 2.
Second,
a second.
Tiffany seconds. All in favor?
All right.
Okay, now,
If I may, I think you might want to put in the motion to give Kathy the authority to submit those applications on your commission's behalf. I think you just might want to have that for the record,
sorry, say again, please.
just to have Kathy's authorization from the commission to give her the ability to submit the applications. I think she might want to have that just on the record.
We didn't do that before.
Well, she's acting on behalf of the commission, so I just think it
Yeah,
would
it
be
was
safe to put
commission
that into it, but-
submission.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
Just to have it.
I mean,
I think it's just to have it noted for this meeting that we as a commission approved Kathy preparing the application.
I don't think we need to do that. Anybody can submit an application.
Part of the commission.
right, she's acting on the commission's behalf, so just to be safe, I think we should just get that on the record.
Okay, does that mean we're gonna have to do it every time we put anything forward?
It would make sense to me for that to happen. Is anytime someone's acting on behalf of the commission, they should just get the whole vote on it, just so it's on record that the commission agreed to let Kathy do the applications.
But haven't we in effect taken care of that by approving the application?
It's kind of just putting that finishing touch on there, just to play it safe.
I just hate to put an extra step in if we don't need it. But if you feel we should, we can. Anybody want to make the motion?
Make the motion.
What do you move?
I am moving to approve Kathy to submit the applications on behalf of the commission.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, Kathy has done her duty. Thank you, Kathy. Okay, now we're going to move on to new business, discussion and possible action on protocols for advancing the candidacy of properties. And I think, I know I talked with Kathy about this and I emailed the rest of you in 2 separate emails so that I didn't violate the sunshine laws. This has come up because we do want to move forward with all deliberate speed. But in a conversation I had with Stephen Neese a few weeks ago, he is extremely concerned about creating backlogs and overwhelming both our meetings and the supervisors. The biggest problem probably, and the only one we can control, is our meetings because, oops, we're limited by time in most of our meetings to between an hour and an hour and a half because other meetings follow ours. And under normal circumstances, that's not going to be a problem. But then you get circumstances that aren't normal. For example, our last meeting, when we were dealing with the Horace Lewis house, that hearing took almost an hour. And if we schedule 3 or 4 hearings in a single meeting, a lot of the time, most of the time, they'll go very smoothly. Most of the time, the owners either won't care or will be supportive. And the neighbors who have been notified will either not care or be supportive. But the problem is we can't predict when something might come out of the woodwork, especially a neighbor who's been notified and decides that they're either unhappy, or even if they're not unhappy, that they have a lot of questions. And answering those questions can take up a lot of time. So we may need to put some boundaries around this. And I want to throw this open for discussion as to, what you think and what you feel is reasonable for us to be able to accomplish, and forward on to the supervisors who also do not want to be inundated with many applications at the same time, because the hearing that we go through in this commission, the supervisors go through the same hearing all over again. We have to present to the supervisors our position, then the owner can come in and present their position if it's different from ours. And there can be public comment and public discussion. So the supervisors probably, unless Steve mentioned the possibility that they would hold a special meeting to approve these if there are a lot of them. But unless they do hold a special meeting, they've got a lot of other township items that they have to deal with at their meetings. And they're probably not going to want to deal with 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 of our applications all at the same time. So we need.
Do they have,
Pardon?
do they have to do that?
No.
They can start the applications after come out from us, the way they want.
They
They
can,
see the law they have in front of themselves, and they can decide to discuss 2 at a time. Only let this work of this committee be affected by what the supervisor, they are independent meetings, and they can work the way it's mostly fits them or the other.
well, you're right, and we don't know how they'll want to handle it, so we'll just concentrate on how it affects our meetings.
Unfortunately, they've sort of set us up for this by not doing a mass overlay and bringing everything in at the beginning as every other township did. So I think realistically, we need to move forward. And, perhaps we try 3 or 4 or 5 at once and see how that goes until we find the balance at which we can get through in our meetings.
Now, on our end, my view is just because, like you said, it's very unpredictable. Whether we can, like today, we're going through, 4 applications, 4 of them.
Now,
That's, I need to clarify that.
Okay, what is the?
Because this was I think I kind of brought this up. I find the stumbling block is having to come and tell you something you already know, which is that these buildings are historic and they can apply.
Right.
We are not, then there's another hearing where we sit down. If we have to do it again. So this part is the part that if we could vote to say, and you could all read the inventory and approve to say that these are all what we just voted, which was able to be applied. All these properties that were done with the state and the Historic Preservation Commission and the Museum Commission, and they were all deemed historic. So they should all be granted the ability to apply, but they don't, and they can apply at a different time. I don't even have to put these 4 in. I can, but you've all said that I can, and that they are worthy of it. And you just keep an inventory. And if they ever came to the township says, here, wait, they've been approved by the commission. They can put their application in, and then we only hear them the one time.
So, as you know, it's easier for me to say this because I know that inventory very well. But I can, like in a single snap, approve everything which is in the inventory. If that's, now I understand more the process. And then once they apply, what happens if after we make them eligible for going on and they do not apply? Do we take initiative ourselves?
We can. It would be basically, I had 60. And
Because
some of them will
I
do it, and
realize-
I'll just do it at
Yes.
speed, but we don't have to do this and hold up the meeting every time because you've all read through and said, yes, there are these historic buildings. They definitely should be able to apply.
My feeling, we can make all them eligible in one shot for voting and then do that. I mean, I'm comfortable with that. If we are not, if we don't are the one to put them on for final decisions, because it's a second step, I don't think you're gonna see anybody from the other coming here for the line. Probably those who will complain about it or oppose it, those you will say.
Yeah.
Those who are agreeable, probably will not.
And when I was doing the ordinance, I reached out to all the homeowners. 5 came up to ask me questions.
So, more or less
Most of them
questions.
wanted to be put into the ordinance because they didn't want to have to go through this process.
So
Just
let's-
include me in it. And if I want to get out or something comes up, but yes, no one objected to it.
And let's assume that, we
Except
make
developers.
it, making it now like a
Mhm.
figurative number. Let's assume that we decide to have 3 or 4 at each meeting. And like you said, it's an unfortunate meeting where all 3, 4 homeowners comes up here for opposing it, and we have to entertain a lengthy discussion about it or something like that. I guess the meeting has to be suspended 1.5 hours and be adjourned to the next one if we don't fit, because there is no other way to predict this. And I wouldn't let the work of this committee be obstructed by these
Well,
potential things.
There's also a couple of other things that need to be considered. One is we do have an application form that you created that has to be completed, which involves a physical inspection of the property before we can go to the hearing stage. In other words, that has to be done before the next one. So, do we want to put Frank in the position of having to do 4 or 5 of these in order to get ready for the next
If
meeting?
this one inspection is done by one member of this committee, there is a set rule for that, more than one is to go.
I don't see a problem with it.
No, it's just, it could be 1 person, 2 people, 3 people, whatever,
Physical inspection on the outside of the property, or you have. to-
All you need is the outside.
Just the outside, just the outside. Yeah. No, we have nothing to do with the inside. The other thing is that the township by law has to notify in writing every neighbor that lives within 200 feet of the property. And that gets, that if we have a lot of properties that we're trying to bring forward at the same time, that could put a fairly big burden on the township, the resources of the township staff.
Once again, the township chose to do it this way.
But could you please point out where it says an inspection's needed? Because it's not on the application. So where is that? That you have to inspect the building before.
We
the
have a
hearing.
form that we have to fill out that we created.
This one,
Yeah, it's that form, right?
is that just the description?
That's,
of
this is the
proposed property?
application. But it
Well,
doesn't
if
say an inspection. We did that because the Horace Lewis house was unoccupied and we thought it was maybe falling apart. That's why I told Frank he didn't even have to go to the ones that are occupied or anything like that. I didn't think we needed to inspect for the hearing. Unless we
Well,
feel an objection because.
No,
someone said
if
it's a
this has
slum building.
if this has been filled out, then we're fine, we're good.
Right, but it won't require an inspection. It just is filling this part. I have friends meetings.
Well, and
done.
also this page,
Mhm.
Yes,
Yeah.
the criteria,
it's a 2-page thingy, yeah.
but it's just the criteria and I have friends done and I just include a picture and.
And I believe we also need the deed,
We do need the
Yep.
deed of it.
I haven't been. able
Proof
to
of
get the
ownership.
deeds. Did you make that accessible? Is it easy for us to get to? Because I couldn't get on it. I
The
do
deeds are accessible to the county website.
for free, right? Remember you were thinking they weren't for free? I can get the tax ID and I can go to the folio and all that. But the deed I was not able to get.
I remember there being.
You could just do that one thing. Yeah, that was the only.
Can I ask a clarifying question real quick?
Sure.
The discussion that we're having right now, is it about whether or not the properties, all right, so what we're doing today is Kathy has brought these to us to say Kathy can complete the application.
No, what we're
Or-
having a discussion about is setting standards, a protocol for going forward.
Oh, I know, that's part of my question. I'm just asking what we're doing right now with,
Right,
with
does not,
this.
does not have to do with Kathy's properties. We're looking at it at abstract.
No, I understand that. I'm just trying to correlate it to the 5 properties that we're looking at right now, because if we were to say, as Rosario put it, we can say very easily that every single property on there will meet the criteria.
Mhm.
We could
It's
read them
just a
all.
matter of the owner applying. And that,
No, the owner doesn't have to. apply.
but that's what I'm saying. I don't understand what we're discussing here, like how many of these applications we want to put in each meeting.
Yeah. Because
We
they're,
already know like all the resources they're gonna
no, but
meet
that's,
the criteria.
no, we know they're
We're
gonna, we're gonna, we
Preaching
know,
to the choir here with the book. I have all the.
we know they're gonna
resources.
meet the criteria. That's not the point. The
Right.
point is, at the next step, when we have the hearing, there's work that has to be done beforehand,
The hearing with us first, or the hearing with the board.
the hearing with us first.
Okay, yeah,
There's work that has to be done beforehand because the owners and neighbors have to be notified so that they can come if they want to.
And the township does that.
And the township does that.
Right, so the only step we're taking out is we're saying all of these properties are worthy to apply. They all meet the criteria to put in an application. Whether I put in 4, 6, 8, I may not. The point is, we can, we've approved that these are historic resources,
Mhm.
Newtown Square.
Mhm.
It's kind of going the other direction because, as Chris pointed out, we're put in that bind of not having any of these properties on the ordinance. So what's the next thing to do? Let's vote and say that this historic resource, and everybody can look at it and read through it, that all the properties are appropriate to be able to file an application.
Think you can ask for a motion whether the historic inventory resource done in 1980, 81, whatever it is, I don't remember the age when it was done.
Yes,
All the property listed there are qualified to be put under the preservation ordinance for class 2, all in block. And then we will proceed the next to the hearing, because the point is, as I understand, that there are 2 levels of hearing to be granted. One at this level, one at the supervisor level,
Mhm.
before that last.
Right.
So then, once these are all in, then we can organize our workload. Whether, filling the form, the township, whatever it is, but consider how many we have, 30, how many are 30 plus, what are the number?
how many?
How many we have there?
Oh, I think there's,
60 or 90, so.
well, in this book, I don't know if there's 90, but there might be.
That
Yes,
might be gone by now.
yes, and they,
Oh,
some
sure.
are, and then I would just remove
Okay.
them. I know
So,
which
but
ones have been
considering-
demolished.
Considering how many are there, and considering the timing in which we want this to be accomplished, we have to speed up the process. Because otherwise, if the risk is that some of them can be, and we have to be ready also to adjust our priorities, because some might be going on for sale, like the Julian's house right now, and we need to go on it a little bit faster.
Well, yeah, I think our general approach was going to be to take first the ones that were under threat for.
Correct.
But once you've approved all of these, and you can look through it and see what they wrote, and it's detailed, it has everything that is asked for, that you're voting on, rather than me, I could come in here each meeting and go, okay, let's go 1 building, 2 buildings, 3 buildings, 4, and you all vote. That to me seems the point that's redundant
But
and
Kathy,
not
let me ask
necessary.
you one thing. And this, you can ask the township, once the process is triggered by approving all them, even though they are not listed, if something happens to them, are they in a semi-protected condition where the township cannot grant permission or stuff like that, or not?
No, until the Board of Supervisors says, yes, we are saying that you're a class 2 and we're putting you on our township inventory. Until that happens, they have no protection.
Despite we said they are eligible.
Correct.
So in that, in between, they are still That
In
limbo
limbo,
doesn't protect
yeah.
them.
Excuse me, this is Steve. I just was able to log on, so I'm sorry that I was not able to join you early on. I just want to be clear that when the township, and I think Connie was getting to this, until the township acts and puts it on the map, which is what happens. It's actually a zoning map amendment. That's when the property then falls into the class that that's been set, whether it's class 1 or class 2. It has to be added to the map.
Right. And we're just trying to take away this step where I'm coming here before I even put an application in. To me, it just seemed ludicrous. I'm sitting here thinking, why am I doing it twice? Why are we doing it and then having a hearing? Because you can approve that they all can apply, they all meet the criteria for applications. And then when properties come up, or if they're more at risk, put the applications in, we put the applications in. As it stands now, you have to wait to another meeting for 4 more or 3 more. Why is what for you to just say yes to then have a hearing? Well, that to me, it doesn't need to be done that
For
way.
sure, they all qualify.
Yes,
for
all of
application.
these done in the
I
inventory.
mean,
And
it's done.
They could be added at once.
You
Instead
can't
of
add
adding.
it once. I'm saying there is
Well,
no-
are you saying that you want the board to act on all of them at one time?
No.
No.
Okay,
that they meet the criteria to apply. They don't have to have the application in, but they meet the criteria, which is what I sit here and say. This is a historic, I'm reading from the book. And
okay.
I know the information about it. And basically, they're just voting to say, yes, they can put their application in. Well, then the application goes in. But if we say, yes, all these warrant the ability to put the application in, they don't necessarily have to put it in, but they all meet it. So if they show up to put one in, the commission's already said, yes, there's a list. Yes, that met the commission's historic criteria.
But you're gonna still have to act and say that you're going to have an action with that property going forward, right?
Steve, let me see if I can summarize what Kathy's saying. This is a very preliminary step. This is the first step.
Yeah,
Just,
I understand that.
yeah, basically saying all these properties, we know they're historic. If they want to put in applications to go forward to the hearing before this commission, they're eligible to do that. That's all that this is about. So that we essentially cut out, we don't cut out, we speed up a step.
I guess I'm not sure how, because it's still gonna have to come before you, and you're still gonna have to schedule a meeting in which you're going to have your review of the property.
That's right.
But Steve, if we don't do this step, they can even come up to us.
Sure they can. Anybody can put an application in at any time and it comes before you. And so I guess I'm not understanding what you think you're getting as a step. That's what I'm trying to understand.
Well, we would proceed if we were to approve this group of 100, whatever they are, then going forward, we would proceed directly to a hearing in front of this commission.
So let me just ask this question. Let's say, and I don't know this, but let's say 10 properties came into us between now and your next meeting. Are you saying that at the May meeting, you want to have 10 hearings?
Nope.
No,
No,
So then what happens at the next meeting?
Well, you can stagger the application, so we don't have to take them all at once. If they apply, if you have 10 applicants,
Right.
we will review just 1, 2, or 3, whatever we can handle in the time.
So, but how is that determined?
because we will vote on the Delaware County Historic Resource Survey.
no.
No, I understand that. I'm okay with that part, but I'm trying to understand how the applicant, how we process the application. If I got 10 applications between now and May, your next meeting in May,
Do we have any, does the chair or the township manager have any discretion in terms of scheduling?
I don't think so. I don't think according to the ordinance, I think it requires you as a committee to put together the steps that you're going to take.
So if 10 applications come in, first off, 10 can come in on their own anyway, but if 10 applications come in and whoever's seeing those applications looks and sees that, oh, they're already been approved for application by the commission based on the fact they were in the historic resource inventory. So we can go right ahead and notify do the next step. We don't need them to show up here to say it again. We'll go to the next,
No,
they
we
have
do.
to sit before us, but they have to only come to us.
So are you simply trying to set them up so that they can go right on the agenda without us having to come and
Me
say,
present
we would
each
like
one
to put them on the agenda?
beforehand, and now you gotta wait another month. Yes. Now that we all know that they're able to put their applications in because they live in a historic home that we've designated.
We will have previously agreed to put them on the agenda without having to meet and say we want to put them on the agenda.
Yes.
That's all we're trying to do?
Yes, you had to meet for
Does
me
that-
to say this.
does
Yeah,
that make
give you
sense, Steve?
4
Yeah, but
properties.
that-
Well, I get it, but I guess I don't understand how you set your schedule because now, I mean, if, like I said, if I had 10 come in, am I to schedule 10 at your May meeting?
We would have to,
We would pick which ones we wanted to schedule, but we
No,
wouldn't
we
have to
can't.
get together to meet and say we want to.
But that's what
well, we
this
can't,
meeting
we
is.
can't do that. We can't meet outside the scope of these formal meetings.
But if we've already agreed to put them on, can you, as the chairman, or Kathy can you put them on the agenda?
Well,
If we've already agreed that they deserve to be on the
what, no,
agenda.
what,
So let me ask you this question, and I just want to understand. So Kathy comes up and says, these 5 are ready to go. Do you want all 5 put on the next meeting? Or do you want Connie to decide that you get 2 at the next meeting? Do you want me to decide that you get 2 at the next meeting?
Well, there's different ways to do it because the homeowner in these cases, most cases, is not putting an application in. So
Right.
it's up to me. Well, I'm not going to put 10 applications in, but you've told me that all these buildings, I now can say, oh, good. Okay, all these buildings, I don't have to schedule each meeting to come in and tell you another 2 buildings or another 2. You've all said, yes, these can apply. So we stagger the applications and we put the most at peril first. So now we're going to put the one up for sale or even 2 next time. I don't even have to do 4 applications, but you've granted me 4 buildings that meet the criteria. Well, perhaps I'm going to put 2 applications in, the 2 that are at risk, and that's what we hear next time. So that to me makes total sense.
but the
I don't know if it's to me, but it makes
Well,
sense.
the thing is, I think what Steve is saying is the agenda has to be established in advance. We can't decide next time
Right.
which ones we're going to take next time. It has to be determined at this meeting.
But the applications have to go in before you can notify the homeowner.
So let me ask you,
We have a hearing scheduled.
Let's see what Steve has to say.
let me
ahead.
just ask this question. If I'm a resident who happens to have a historic home, and I'm not, but let's say I am, and I would like to have my home added. And I said, I'd like to have my hearing next time, but it's on this list that you have there. And I get another person who does the same thing, and then Kathy gives us 2. I mean, I guess my question becomes, how do we determine the priority to which you hear these? And the other side of it is there a limit that you want to hear in one night? And I get it. If a resident comes in and says, I'm happy, I want to be on the list, it's probably a pretty short hearing because you've already determined that they meet it, which makes it simple. But if a resident comes on and they're not on the list, that may be longer. Or if you put one on and the resident doesn't want it, that may be longer. And I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out in how you want to set your agenda.
Can you do in order of applications, the timing of applications? And, if they have to apply, if a residents apply, it will not beforehand how many applications you have. You don't have to discuss them all at once. you can just allow discussion for how many you can fit in one meeting, and the other one goes. I'm sure the township has many items on the agenda that doesn't discuss them all at once. For many
Yeah.
others. So,
I mean, the township right now is asked the solicitor and I to come up with the way to handle these as they come forward. So we're going to be doing that for the township's role. But I mean, my concern is you could potentially do this whole batch all the time, right? And you could do 3 or 4 a night. The township probably isn't going to process 3 or 4 a month. They're just not. And so I just want to make sure we have a priority of the direction in which you want to head. That's all. And if you all come up with something and you say that Connie can decide that based on the application, or we do it based on the date of the application when it's submitted, and that becomes the priority, I think the second piece of that is I need to know from you how many you want before you in any one evening, knowing that you're typically limited to a 2-hour window. In that, you know, if we have a meeting at 7, then we have to be done by 7.
We have to figure out how many we can do. Because if we're doing one a month, we're going to be doing this for the next 6 years.
Well,
And I don't think that works for anybody.
No, it doesn't. It
But
seems,
let me be clear that the township was very strict in how it put out this. If the township wanted to handle 100 of these at one time, the township would have done it all at one time. And it said it was too big of a process to do it one time. And so if you think the Board of Supervisors is going to handle, you know, a large number of these all in 1 month, they're probably not. And so I don't want the expectation to be that you're going to process 4 of these and the township's going to be acting on 4 every month, because I don't think that's going to happen.
But we don't have any control of what the Board of Supervisors wants to do. That's up to you guys. I mean, up to them. We can just, we want to just split up our part of the work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever you do with that, it's you know, it's a not different
I
business.
mean,
We
we
don't
can
have.
approve all these and the applications don't even go in.
We don't
Most
have.
of them.
Now, I
yeah,
don't know.
I think what I'm starting to hear is that we need to be able to keep some flexibility into the numbers of hearings we schedule in any given month. Because there will be times when the applications that are put forward are a piece of cake. We know there's going to be absolutely no problem with them. There are other times when unexpected things may happen. Like, for example, Steve Bradley called me this afternoon and said, you're going to have to change the agenda. We have this new property you need to consider. That turned out not to be the case. You know, what happened at 2 o'clock got undone by 5 o'clock. But these things do come up. You know, I do get these calls saying, we suddenly have something else we have to do. So maybe there needs to be flexibility.
Well, there's always going to be flexibility. And we've seen that already because we've had things added that we did not know were coming. And that's the way it's going to be. That's fine.
Right.
We're discussing an hypothetical situation that you cannot resolve, because it is true that you can have one night where you can discuss easily 5 applications in a few minutes because everybody's available. And you can have one night where one single application can take even over the time that we have allowed, because like the other night when we were here last time, things were going on and on and on. So basically we can have a general guidelines, but we have to be flexible, and we'll be flexible the way we can. I mean, it's a total hypothetical. There is no way we can resolve these on a table right now. So it's impossible.
I think we need to put on the agenda what we think we can get through. And I think if we have 2 different properties, people sitting in the room, we do those first. And if we can't get to the others, we agree to push them to the following meeting.
There's not much more to do. That's right.
Yeah. Can we do that, Steve? Can we push things to the following meeting if they're on the agenda and we don't get to them?
Yes, the challenge that I would have is if we've, I just want to be careful that we're not notifying people that this is happening and then we bring them in and then there's not really any intent in getting to it just because we want to always keep a list on. If you follow what I'm saying, I think we're going to have to work through that process to see what makes sense in a typical meeting, what you can go through and handle.
How many neighbors show up?
Yeah, neighbors that show up, even a property owner that may or may not be in agreement.
Well, if we, in this hypothetical situation, have to take two properties where no one appeared for the hearing and push them to the next meeting, does that mean that we have to put another notice in the newspaper that the hearing has changed?
Probably not, in that the official hearings with the board. And, and so that's the one that, I'm working through all that with the solicitor, whether I need to notify the 200 feet around for every property when it comes before you, or does it just have to be notified when it goes before the board? And so that's the piece that we're having to clarify. But if I have to do it before you, then you have to open it, and then you have to say it's being continued to a date certain so that the people know what date that is. But here's what I would say. If I'm a resident and I find out that you've moved me off once, twice, 3 times just because of the thing, I'm going to get frustrated that you're not planning your agendas properly.
I think that a reasonable way is anyhow to start and see how it goes, and we can calibrate ourselves once we start. Of course, if we see that in a meeting we have to postpone one property, we will lighten up the next meeting. We will not be so irresponsible to call more people for the next meeting if we already have some backlog from the previous meeting.
I have another question about the application hearing. So the one hearing we did have, that was unusual because we did have pushback from the owner. These properties, when the application is submitted and the hearing is called and all of the notices are sent out, how long and how much information would have to be provided and presented to us? And then how long would each of those presentations take, assuming that there wasn't any additional comments from the public?
Well, we would have to, although we all know what it is, we would have to present the information again so that the owner could hear what we thought was important.
Mhm.
In other words, we can't just say, oh, we think these properties meet the criteria.
Right,
And let it go at
that's
that.
what I'm asking. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm wondering how,
No,
no, if
No,
there was
no.
no objection,
No,
like how much
not whether they
information do we have
object or
to
not.
present at this meeting?
Yeah,
Because I'm trying to identify like how long.
the owner needs to know why we think property is acceptable.
Mhm.
So
Well,
No.
I'm sorry. I would say that you need to present enough information that your board, as you, have taken a review of it and make a decision that the property is acceptable. I hear that you're saying that all of the properties in the book are eligible to be considered. Are you saying all the properties in the book are automatically should be a class 2? I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying.
Oh, we're just trying to bypass me present or anyone having to come and present each one to say, yes, that property can apply.
This is like
It's an
the pre-application.
Okay, so then I would say you need to present enough information to you as a board, whoever's doing that, whoever's filing the application, is to present enough information to the rest of the board so that the board can make a decision, does it actually qualify?
I mean, we have
Because, go ahead.
we have in the ordinance, we have like the 10 criteria or whatever it is. Phase 1 or phase 2 application.
Yeah, and they're all.
I-
listed.
But,
What? Yeah,
And they're all
it's
listed
on the
here.
application. I would
Mhm.
think at the very least, we would have to stipulate what criteria the property meets.
So the point that I'm trying to get to is, the timing issue that we're trying to hypothetically guess. So if we think that once the application is submitted and Kathy has to present to us enough information for us to approve and to pass along to the Board of Supervisors for them to approve. What does that presentation look like? Is it 10 minutes? Is it 15 minutes?
Oh, I see.
Is it 5 minutes? Because,
I
you
think
know, if it's a 15-minute presentation and,
I
you
would
know,
think.
But can I ask one thing, why the presentation is to be made in front of the board? We all have access to the information for those properties.
because that information has to then go to the Board of Supervisors.
But you just voted that these four can make applications. So are you gonna now say no?
No.
This is what I'm confused.
no, I
I feel
think
like I'm
that
doing the
presentation
same thing twice.
Let's say that this is a rehearsal for the Board of Supervisors, that presentation you make here is then passed on to the Board of Supervisors. So it's not that we're going to say, no, it's not appropriate. It's, yeah, that information is perfect, or you know what, that we're not
Okay, I
getting
see
enough
what you're saying.
information here. We need to add more. We're still going to approve it, but you know, here's what we need, you know, like think of it as like a pre-application, like a review of the application process. Because whatever we send to the board, they're the ones who have the ultimate say. And if we just said, well, we know that it's an old property, they're
No, no,
not
no.
going to
It
just.
meets the criteria
Right.
and you only have to pick several and specifically note that. And the properties that we have address each one of these. So that's what, that's what it
you're
was
talking-
made based
I think
on,
you're
that,
talking
but I
about
get.
two things. I think Kathy's talking about setting things up to go onto the agenda. And then I think we're talking
The
about,
hearing.
it will take long enough to say, this is what the property is, this is why we think it's historic, and are there any comments?
In support of the agenda.
Yeah, but
I mean,
wanna
I
say-
think you're looking at
I
a
wanna add
5-minute
one thing.
presentation max.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see that it needs to be lengthy. Unless there are special circumstances, as Chris was saying.
I want to add one thing. The criteria we're talking about were set years ago by the Pennsylvania Museum Commission. Those criteria are the same criteria we generated at the list of property. That's why they are listed there, because they fit
Oh, no
those
one's,
criteria.
no one's debating
So I'm
that.
saying that booklet that Katie has, that you can download as a PDF online, if the board of supervisor wants to know why they fit, it's there. You don't need to.
But they're not going to go and look at it. They
Yeah.
want to be presented with it.
We take those few papers, scan it, and present on a PowerPoint.
All right,
It takes 2
I,
seconds.
my point is, I just want to know how long it's going to take. Because if a presentation takes 5 minutes, then we can say, okay, you know what, we can probably see this many because we know that the owners are not. But if they're going to take more than that, then we have to know, like, that's going to be a time constraint that gives us an answer as to how many we can
But
take
do we
in a
have to
meeting.
present to the board of supervisors?
No,
Mm-mm.
What?
Do we have to present this to the board of supervisor? If the answer is no. what
We
are
voted
discussing
in
about?
our hearing to say, to pass it to them. And
Yeah,
we-
but you've got to give them a basis. I mean, like, if you vote in the hearing, that's fine. Then you need to either one of two things, either write up a report that says these are the reasons why we did and submit that and see how the board wants to hear it. But it's going to be a public hearing when it goes to the board. And so if you are acting as the applicant on behalf of the property owner, then one of the two, either the property owner or probably somebody from this board, does need to be prepared to put on a case for why it would be. Because if a resident, if a property owner, let's not say the owner itself, but one that's around that property were to contest it and the board were to go ahead and approve it, just based off of, a report, then what I could tell you is that when it goes, if it was appealed and goes to court, there's not a lot of evidence in play. So you want enough evidence in play that allows for you to say why you have your position, because it's not just the Board of Supervisors potentially, it potentially is the county court level, potentially hearing an appeal. So you have to have enough of a hearing that gives you that level of ability to have be able to present why you believe this property fits that classification. If somebody appeals it, whether it be the property owner themselves or one of the residents next to that property.
So Steve, I guess the issue is simply this. The evidence for this property to fit this criteria are in the county, because Delaware County did that survey years ago.
Now, if the problem might arise if that information that the county already has is not sufficient to be challenged in the courtroom. But I guess we can only cross that bridge when we get there and see what we can do if it gets to that level.
One
I'm saying
thing-
that
yeah.
the basis for the information is already existing. Because an inventory was done and is listed on the website of the Pennsylvania Museum Commission. You can go see them one by one.
A question I have about this book, when was that done? When was that? book?
81.
When was that?
84, this one's.
1984. So that's 30 years out of date.
Mhm.
You know, I think one of the things that we need to do is that we need to verify that there have been no significant changes since 1984. We can't simply assume that properties in that 30-year interval have had no changes whatsoever. And, you know, so we do have an obligation to go a step, you know, beyond what's in that book. And I think, you know, what Steve is saying in terms of representation at the Board of Supervisors meeting, as chairman of this commission, I view that as my job.
To what?
To represent us at the hearings of the Board of Supervisors. So that if there are any questions and I mean, obviously, I would love to have some of you who are more experienced than I am back me up. But I think I would be the person who needed to speak for the commission.
But then again, this will be the case just in case of oppositions or.
And most of
These,
these.
for
you got
those who don't
from
have
the
issues.
beginning.
I anticipate that this is something, you know, we wouldn't be standing up there fighting every week.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I think that we have to wait, and you know, if that happens, and then we have to take step for those cases. But if it doesn't happen, we have accomplished those who are smooth and go on, and we move on. So let's assume that maybe a certain percentage, I don't know, I mean, maybe you can have 10, 15 cases of oppositions, we deal with those in, you know, as they presented themselves.
You know, but this, we still haven't come to grips with the basic issue, which is how many of these, what's the maximum number of these? What's the maximum number of these, assuming that there
Let me
are,
back up to this just a second, because I just want to go back to the comment about the dating of these and that they're 30 years old, and we have to familiarize, well, we, i.e., can familiarize yourselves, because as Rosario pointed out, it's on the state's website. I have the book, I have another copy of the book, no one's asked for it. All this information is out there, and I cannot present these. And the reason I'm bringing this up every time is because I feel like I am putting all these properties, I'm going to be dead by the time I get them done. And I saw that there needed to be a shortcut. And I saw that this was there was a way to do that. But when you say that we have to familiarize, but no one has.
no, but nobody's arguing about that. What I'm saying
But,
is.
we brought that up, that we have to, before we.
No,
vote,
but
we
what
have
I'm
to
saying
know.
is that when we go to the next step, we have to verify that the information in that book has not changed in 30 years. Now, if you drive past the property every week and you're really familiar with it, then okay, that's verification. We know it hasn't changed from what was reported in there. But if we're using that book and that book is 30 years old, I mean, anybody who works with in any kind of an academic context at all, whether it's history or anything else, will tell you that a source that's 30 years old needs to be checked and updated.
Well, that would be part of the application process. If
Exactly.
we are doing the application, then we will
Yeah.
verify. And if
Yeah.
the homeowner is doing the verification, then we will take that and probably still verify.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, and presumably that
To
they-
Kathy's point, you know, if we can get these things so that we can add them to the agenda as they come up, whether they come up between a meeting or not a meeting.
But do we
What's our
want to, like, you know, I'm tasked with doing the agenda for the meeting, working with Steve.
Mhm.
So what do I say about next month? For example, we already have 2 other properties we're gonna have to deal with next month. Help me on this, Steve.
The Lysander
So
property.
there's the Lissitor Farmhouse and
The
then
Lissitor
there is
Farmhouse and,
Cottage 5 in Ellis Preserve.
and this floral studio.
Mhm.
So we already have two for next month that we're gonna have to deal with. That will need to be hearings.
So if you think that they are complex, it will take time. Just leave those two.
Just to be clear, they're
I'll
not
just put
hearing
in the
for
James
the,
Price House because that's the one for sale. I don't need to put the other applications in. I'm in touch with the one homeowner and so the applications don't have to be, you've
No, but
approved the ability.
the question is, how many do we want to try and tackle next month, knowing that we already have two that have been held over that we're gonna have to deal with?
One more, that's it. We'll have three.
Mhm.
Right? That's it.
Yeah, I won't put the other three applications in for next meeting. I can put those applications in 3 weeks.
Okay,
just to be clear, those two properties are not for the historic resources inventory.
Right.
Those
Yeah.
are.
No, they're-
two-
they're-
Yeah,
they're-
yeah,
they're-
I understand that, yeah. I picked.
So you're not
two
gonna have a hearing or anything
Yeah.
like that.
no, they're not for the historic resource inventory, it's just a question.
No,
of
right.
time meeting.
And,
We don't have
and
to hear
based on,
everybody.
and based on what we went through with the first cottage discussion, I think we should plan 20 to 30 minutes for those two, which leaves us time for one other.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's pretty reasonable.
Okay, so maybe the way we'll handle it is we'll just decide at each meeting what we're gonna push forward for the following meeting. Does
Is
that
what
make
we're doing
sense?
today?
I think it's the best approach.
Mhm.
Because there is no way to foresee. Wrong, I mean, we can take just, if there is a day which is
Yeah.
completely light, you can switch three new. Otherwise, you have to deal with the one which are back on the law.
Well, and after we've been doing this for a year, we'll have a better idea of how it works.
Correct, that's what I feel is gonna happen. So,
Yeah,
Yeah, and if we get to mid-month and you have an idea of what's going to be on the agenda for the next month, and Kathy says, hey, I think I've got an easy one that shouldn't take very long,
Mhm.
and you decide to add it,
Mhm.
then that is a reasonable way to proceed.
does that sound okay to you, Steve?
If that's what you want to do, I'm fine with that.
Okay,
now, the issue remains whether you wanna put the motion for that, for the. Right? You know, bypass this internal step.
Well, I
I
would
don't
love
know that we need to
bypass
do
it.
it this month, but
Okay,
if we prepare for how we want to do that,
okay.
then, I mean, I think we have an idea of what we're doing next month, agenda
And
wise,
just
so.
to familiarize yourself with the inventory and the properties. So that, and the concept basically is this is what we used when we did the ordinance. Are the properties that we used. They were not put into our ordinance.
Mhm.
So this is a different way of doing it that they're not in the ordinance. They're not even through the application process, but we're just saying they merit.
Have a
That.
PDF copy of that book. In
Send-
send it to everybody.
If you
We'll
could,
send
if you could
give
send it to Steve,
Steve,
and have
because
it
he
forwarded
has to
to us,
send it to us.
Because-
And officially comes from you to them.
because I used to be able to see that online and I can't find it online anymore, so.
It's not online anymore. but
No,
that's
he-
what the-
he has it.
Yep. That would be very helpful because, when we talked about having several things coming up tonight, it's just not that easy to research them without having.
Steve, I'll send
It
you the PDF copy of this, and I'll also send you the link where the. Each
Okay,
member of the.
can you
commission
note
can go
that he's
on
going
the
to send it to
Pennsylvania Commission and access one by one this property by putting the address of the property.
And we will rename it the Bible.
Yes.
Of the gospel.
And
There you go.
some are no longer there.
Okay, so we
So
have
we
a
have the
plan.
three.
That's good. So let's move on to old business. Update regarding the proposed amendment to the Historic Preservation Ordinance. This is one of the Steves needs to tell us about this.
Steve, do you want to take this one or?
Yeah, I can take it, Steve. So I would just say that it's on the list to be reviewed by the solicitor. I would say that there's a couple things that are before it, so I don't have a time for you as to when the solicitor will have it and get it back to you at this point. But it's on his list. He's got it along with about 10 other things that the board has asked him to look at. So that's where we are.
Okay. Well, we'll stay tuned. Next item is discussion and possible action regarding the Historic Structures Workshop by the Delaware County Planning Department. They looked like they were looking for something in May or June of this year. Anybody know anything further?
It looked fascinating, but it was short details. I looked at some of the seminars that they've been holding in, I guess it was somewhere else nearby. And they looked interesting, but what they were actually asking from us, I'm not really sure.
Same, I had the same perception. And plus, I felt like it's a little bit premature for us because we are in the organization phase, even in terms of the benefit to the homeowner to have these properties. They are still not part of, of a class or a group of people. So maybe we can reconsider that moving forward, following years.
Like maybe if they decide to do it next year or something of that sort. Kathy, did this come in through you originally?
Through Kate Clifford, yes. I meet with her regularly
I
from the
don't
county, and so she sent it to me. I mean, if we had to organize it and put it all together and then advertise it, to me, it wasn't something that I was interested in because I didn't
No,
see
I
a
was
lot of
just
interest
trying
in
to,
the
I was just trying to
community.
remember.
Yeah,
where it came in
she
through.
sent it to me and I said I would put it out there
Yeah.
and to see if people, but I didn't think it was.
I mean, I'd be
Right.
interested in knowing more about what they're actually posing or looking for from us.
A venue,
Is it a venue? Is
a
it
venue for
what's
the,
cost?
for the person to do the workshop, they're hands-on, yeah. So basically you'd need interest, you'd need people who are homeowners that want to maybe do some,
That's why I
If-
said it was premature,
Yeah.
because who do we bring there for a venue like that? They
we haven't
have,
connected.
If you had a good way to get it out there, I think there's more interest than you might know.
the township.
I would have jumped all over the one she has right now, except I'm gonna be out of town this week, but I would love a little more hands-on knowledge on how to actually repair plaster.
In terms of
Oh, I'm
venue,
sure there's probably a lot of people that would,
Yeah.
but that would have to be advertised and all through the
Mhm.
township. And I think they pay, his fee was 300. There was money involved, you had to come up with so
Mhm.
much, and then the venue, because it is something hands-on, you couldn't do it in a
Yeah.
room like this.
in terms of the venue, there was a possibility, I'd have to look into it, and I think, again, it's a bit rushed for this year. But there is a possibility that Dunwoody could provide a venue. Maybe. I can't speak for our CEO. I can only ask.
Where you could do hands-on, you mean, things like.
Well,
that.
yeah, I mean, we have a large barn
That's right.
that serves as our maintenance facility.
Mhm.
We also, at this point, have an absolutely enormous auditorium.
Yes, you do. It is enormous.
I mean, it is truly enormous. It seats about 300 people.
And you
Um,
have decent on-site parking.
Pardon?
And you have decent on-site parking.
And we have it, well, we have enough, let's put it that way.
I can always find a place to park.
Yeah, good. I'm glad of that, Chris. So Kathy, maybe what you should do is get back to her and say, you know, we
If we're
like
considering it.
the idea, but it's really too soon for us. And, you know, if they do this next year, if they get in touch with us further in advance, maybe we can set something up a year from now. That sounds like a plan. Great.
That does.
Listener Farmhouse has been deferred to May. So it's just on the agenda as a placeholder to let us know that. So we have no public to comment. So items for the next agenda, I guess it would be it would be listener, the floral shop, the flower shop. And if that's all we have, you want to put more than one additional one, we probably could do more.
Of the properties?
Yeah,
Yeah, well, the two that are would be the mill workers because the owner wanted me to do it, and Friends meeting. Because they, again, the owners or on
Okay,
our
so we'll
historic
put-
society. They would be just a approve.
So we'll put Friends meeting on,
Mhm.
and what other one did you?
Mill
want?
Workers House.
Mill Workers House,
Mhm.
okay.
Did you want to do the James Price because it's up for
The
sale?
James Price is the one that we were gonna do.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's definitely the one we're gonna,
yeah.
all right.
That's the Mill Workers House.
No, James Price is the one up for sale that was the veterinarian office.
Oh, so we.
So
wanna-
the other two would just be a yes to, because they've agreed they want to be on it. So they're not gonna, now, and I don't even know, if they have no neighbors and they would object, the whole street, paper mill is
Well, I mean,
historic, but
yeah,
Friends meeting wouldn't, so.
no,
So
well, and I guess the Miller's house is actually your property, isn't it?
now it's one just like it, but it's further down the road.
Oh, okay.
Are you planning on having these hearings in the May meeting?
Having what?
The hearings in the May meeting? Is that what you're planning to do?
Yeah,
So that date is May 25th, and we actually have 28 days until that meeting. So I believe, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the ordinance says that we have to have 30 days of a notice to the homeowner before we have any sort of hearing.
so you're saying we can't do it in the May meeting, we've got to push it to June?
If I'm correct on that, yes.
I have to look at that, but I think that's right.
Well, then every time it's gonna be 28 days because they're exactly 4 weeks apart.
Well, it also has to do with how the month falls. So,
Well, then perhaps we need to keep a watch on that going forward and propose things 2 months out if we need to.
Well, that's why if you approve
Yeah.
a big block of property in the inventory, I
I'd
wouldn't have to
approve that
wait
now.
and do that. So,
I'd approve that now.
Well, we did, we already did.
oh, what?
We never voted on whether we should approve the book. Pushing it back,
That's what I asked.
and we
yeah,
should
you'll have to act on that.
act on that now, get it approved, vote.
Put the motion for approving everything on the book.
Yeah, I think that's a specific enough vote that you'll need to put that on the agenda as a specific vote.
We'll put it on for next month and
So we'll do that
Put it on
next month, we'll put that on the
Make it
agenda. for
kind of
next month.
It's on the agenda, so we know it's on the agenda.
And in the meantime, if you
s-
want to propose additional properties for next month, a rerun of what you did with the 4 for this month, just to get them moving,
Mhm.
you could do that. It doesn't interfere
And
with
then
the
we'll vote
vote on the
too.
whole book.
Mhm. Yes, because we can't hear any of them.
Yeah, like May to June, there's not a problem the way it falls because there's actually a 5th Tuesday. So it's actually 5 weeks in between. So that May to June is not a problem.
The May to June is not a problem, it's just that April to May is a problem.
Yeah, just the way it falls.
Yeah, okay. So what we can
That's why we
do
need
for
to
next
approve all
month
the
is the
applications.
2 carryover properties. We'll vote on the package of 100. And you can bring forward more individual
Mhm.
properties to do what we did today, so that we can get them moving.
And then if we do vote on the book, it would include the problem of the 30 days.
Moving forward,
Yes, that's another
yes.
good reason to do that.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
who would have known there's only 2 months?
Yeah,
Mhm.
and,
But there's 30 days. Oh, okay.
if we are going to do a July meeting, we might want to be ready to push things next month because it looks like June to July is only 4 weeks.
this raises an interesting question. Right now, the way the ordinance is written, we have to go through the summer. But I think Steve was going to look into it and see if we really needed to do that. Stephen?
Yeah, I don't have an answer yet on that, but the way it reads, I think you do.
Yeah, do you know what the Board of Supervisors is going to do in the summer?
Well, they always meet at least once a month because the second class township code requires it.
Okay, so they just don't meet twice a month.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay,
Do we know how many members we need here to,
a quorum is 4.
okay. We should be able to do that. It's a Tuesday.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be bad.
Anyway, nobody on this commission is allowed to take a vacation.
Sure. I only take 3-day vacations from Friday to Monday, so Tuesdays are fine.
Oh, good man. Okay, any other business, anything else we need to put on the agenda next time? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn.
A second.
All in favor? We're out of here. Turn off your little thingies.